In Path of Exile 2, during the campaign, the difference between a 3-second boss fight and a 2-minute long boss fight can often just be the difference between a good weapon and a bad weapon. But I'm hoping that in today's video, I'm really going to be able to show you the impact of this with some numbers and some footage, just to drill it into your head that your weapon is ultra important in this game. And in today's video, I'm going to speak about how to do that, what kind of modifiers to look for on your weapons, and also how to manage your currency so you're able to have the currency you need for that weapon upgrade when you need it most. So on screen now, you are seeing the difference between a white weapon and a magic weapon with just one good modifier, which is 2 to 6 physical damage, and then a rare crossbow with 2 rune sockets, quality, couple of damage mods. And even though on your skill page, it may look like these are just slightly more damage, in practice, you can see the difference. Like, even though the damage goes up by, let's say, twice as much, these fights are not twice as quick. They are like exponentially faster. And now I'm also going to show you a Devourer kill. So there's a Devourer with just a normal white weapon, and then again that magic weapon, and then the rare weapon. But I've also added a couple of extra things, which are iron rings. Any sources of flat added damage to attacks are really impactful for martial builds early, and then also on gloves, fire damage to attacks. All of these, they don't look like big numbers, like 1 to 4 physical damage is not that much. It makes a huge difference, and I'm hoping that I am illustrating that by showing you this here. Let me just hop into PoB, because this will also help illustrate the difference between, let's say, a white bow and then also a rare bow. So here we have our white bow, but if we look at this would be a pretty damn good bow early on. We've got percent fizz, flat fizz, attack speed, and proj skills, and 2 sockets. This doesn't like double our damage, doesn't triple it, it 4.7x's our damage. So with this on, we go from 38 to 180. Now we can also look at the impact of, let's say, gloves. So these are just basic gloves with attack speed and lightning damage to attacks. That further increased our damage by like, not a bit, but like 15 to 20%. With a bad bow, if you were to get gloves like this, these gloves alone, flat damage to attacks and attack speed, this increases your damage by like 60, 70%. Just this. Same with iron rings. We could even have a look over here. Iron ring, boring plain iron ring. This alone with no modifiers, granting us about 17% increased damage. So if you throw all of these on and then compare the damage, we've gone from 38 all the way up to 250. So gear, so important. Another modifier that is really important, level of skill gems. So you get this for different things. So like projectile gems, melee gems, and casters, it's especially important. But level of skills, super big for your damage. But I guess now the question you want to know is, what does a good weapon look like on, let's say, a melee build or a martial build? So generally the modifiers you're going to be looking for are percent increased physical damage, and then flat numbers like adds 2 to 5 physical damage or fire damage or lightning damage. Those are all prefixes. It's going to be different for different builds, but it's going to be generally true for most martial builds. Then for our suffixes, level of projectile skills, attack speed, and then sockets are really big. Things like an early lightning rune, the one that grants you flat lightning damage, is very big for damage, but even these ones that grant flat fire or flat cold, very big. On caster builds, again, it's going to be slightly different from build to build, but generally things like gem levels is very important, and then spell damage, elemental damage, cast speed, those are all the kinds of mods you're going to be looking for. If you're a new player, following a build guide, try reading. Usually a good build guide will say, these are the types of modifiers you're looking for in the campaign. One other thing is that of quality. You can get these things called blacksmith's whetstones. These will improve the quality of a martial weapon. So on a low level one, it's going to increase it by a greater amount. So any increases to that base number from the explicit mods are then multiplied further by the quality. So quality is very important, and you can get it from salvaging your items. So don't forget to salvage to get some blacksmith's whetstones. But now the question that I'm sure you're asking is, cool, that's great. but how do I just get a good weapon? This is possibly one of the frustrations with PoE 2 currently, but there are some ways that you can try and improve your odds of getting good weapons. First thing is, of course, looking at what falls on the ground and identifying it. If you're playing a crossbow build, it could be a massive upgrade. But the next thing is going to be that of currency management, especially early on. So orbs of transmutation and orbs of augmentation, fairly common. I wouldn't be too wasteful with these because you can run out, but these are not like hyper valuable. You will find more if you do use all of them. But the big ones during the campaign are going to be your regal orbs. Regal orbs, these often are a choke point for crafting during the campaign, where you might have your transmutes and your aug. You might have even a bunch of exalted orbs, but you don't have the regal orbs. So these you should be very sparing with. Other thing is obviously exalted orbs. You do find a few of these during the campaign, but again, save these rare currencies for your weapon. Other thing, really important, is orbs of alchemy. So these will make an item rare with 4 modifiers. These should also, I would say, spare them for your weapon. You don't want to be using these critical and fairly rare currencies on less important gear slots, because nothing is going to have the same impact on your damage as your weapon. So regals, you can get a few more regals by disenchanting rare items at vendors like Una. She will give you some regal shards, but these are pretty hard to come by. So treat your regals, exalts, and alchemies like gold. The other thing that I mentioned are blacksmith whetstones. You can get those from salvaging weapons. Again, use these sparingly when you need that extra bit of damage. And the other thing is artificer's orbs to add sockets to items. Again, use these sparingly when you need it. If you have a weapon, it's dealing enough damage, and you don't really need to use what few artificer's orbs you have, don't waste them. Same with your runes. Save your runes for when you really need them. Essences can also be quite impactful early on. You can get some good ones that add a flat amount of damage to your weapons. So spare your essences primarily for your weapons. The next thing is to not be wasteful with your gold. When you do buy something, know why you're buying it. Don't just waste it or say like, that might be good, I'll get it. This obviously comes with knowledge, knowing what is good and what isn't good, but generally don't waste your gold just randomly gambling. Gambling, I generally save as a last resort. So if the item doesn't drop, if the vendor doesn't sell it, if the currency doesn't hit, then that's when I'm going to gamble if I really am desperate for a weapon upgrade. Now, there's one other really important thing that I want to discuss, and that is to do with weapon base types. As you progress throughout the campaign, you will start finding new bases, weapon types that have an inherently greater amount of damage. So you can see we've got a makeshift crossbow at level 1, deals 7 to 12 damage. But then at level 4, we get this one that deals 8 to 15. And then level 10 is 11 to 26. These are the numbers that are going to be increased by anything that's like 50% increased physical damage on your crossbow. So knowing when a new base type becomes available is very important, not only to keep up with your damage, but also for knowing when to maybe save your currency or when to spend it. For example, if I'm level 9 and I really have like a crappy tense crossbow, and I think, let me get another tense crossbow and I'll use my 1 orb of alchemy on it. In that instance, I would say rather just suffer until you reach level 10, find a sturdy crossbow and use an alchemy on that. That's what I mean by good currency management combined with understanding when new base types appear, because these new base types can make a tremendous difference. So over on PoE2wiki.net, this is just for crossbows, but you can also look at the various other base types of weapons. Pay attention to when these become available. There may be an instance where you get an insanely good varnished crossbow and you kind of like skip across to the like next 2 or 3. That's like you only then need a bombard crossbow, but generally pay attention to when the next breakpoint is and how that affects your use of currency. Last thing is vendors. Vendors are really important in PoE 2. Every time you level up, vendors' inventories will partially update. So again, if I'm level 9 and I'm really struggling with a bow, like I haven't got a good crossbow, you know in the back of your head, all right, when I get to level 10, not only are those new base types might start dropping, they can drop earlier, but another thing you can do is go to the vendor and check. So level up, check the vendor, see if there is a new upgrade, because even if you have like a rubbish crossbow like this, and you're using this for some reason until level 10, and then you get the new base type, that base type alone could be a huge damage upgrade, especially if you are lucky enough to have an alchemy. You could use an alchemy or even just a transmute to maybe hit one good damage mod, maybe even put in one socket and a rune, and that might be enough to destroy the boss of Act 1 or something like that. So I hope all of this was helpful and really demonstrated how impactful and important your weapons are in PoE 2. It's different from PoE 1. PoE 1, with a similar setup to what I showed you in PoB like this, a good weapon might only increase your damage by like 2.5x. Whereas in PoE 2, it might 5x it. So pay attention to your weapon. It's the number one biggest tip I can give to both new and returning players in PoE. Let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget to join the Discord and join the streams. I'll be streaming the league start of 0.4. So hope to catch you there. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Catch you in the next video, and bye-bye.